I'm going to call the regular session of the Springfield City Council to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Pitts.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Councilor Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow.
Here.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Present.
All right. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us online to please keep yourself on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There are 2 times this evening designated for public testimony and will be listed as public hearings and business from the audience on the agenda. If you're joining us with this tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use your raise hand option to be called upon to provide public comment when the designated time is announced. When we will call on you, please state your name, ward, or general location for the record. The order of public testimony is as follows: anybody who raises their hand, and then I want to acknowledge we have some public comment that we received by email tonight. First item, please.
Mayor, the first item is the consent calendar.
Want a motion yet?
I am ready, Steve.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. Lots of stuff on there.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. Neil, could you call the roll, please?
Councilor Pitts.
Hey.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Stair.
Aye.
Councilor Woodrow. Councilor Woodrow. I believe you're still muted.
Yes.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Mayor, you have no public hearings tonight. Your next item is business from the audience. And as you mentioned, if folks would like to speak during business from the audience, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll get you in the queue. Mayor, our first speaker is Chris McAllister. Chris will be followed by Ben Christensen. And Chris, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Good evening, Council. My name is Chris McAllister. I come from Ward 3. I'm coming before you as a member of the community serving our unhoused. I wanted to say thank you for helping us help our folks on one of the hottest days in record history. We served people who would not have any other options. One of the things that we do as Carry It Forward is we go out and we try and solve issues in the moment and try and fill the gaps that are not currently covered in our county or city networks. And so I really wanted to say thank you for your efforts both now and during the winter when we were able to help a lot of our unhoused who were unable to get shelter due to the COVID limitations in our county. We have been working really hard to try and adjust and shift and meet the needs as they come. And with that, there's a certain level of flexibility needed and also the ability to problem solve in the moment. And so I wanted to welcome the continued partnerships and ask y'all each to look forward towards the winter, knowing that it's not that far, and the fire seasons as well. We need different solutions and different types of fixes for each of the needs as we encounter them. And also not forget that for every high school kid we have, we need to have housing. We need to have the ability for those people to grow and stay in our community. And that also starts with our unhoused folks. We need them to have homes and places to be here too. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Mayor, the next speaker is Ben Christensen, followed by Aaron Moss Despain. And Ben, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
All right, can you hear me?
We can.
All right. I've been listening to the conversations around the changing the culture of policing in Springfield, and I've seen an issue that keeps popping up. It is the idea that it is very difficult to change, or to enact change, and that it will take a very long time. This is simply not true, and I can prove it. In 1960, Martin Luther King was told the exact same thing by the white people of Birmingham, Alabama. They even went so far as to write a letter they published in the newspaper asking him to let this process happen naturally as the law and society would allow for it. His amazing response was justice long delayed is justice denied. We all know, even those of us that were taught a very whitewashed version of history, that he did not listen to them. What you might not know is that during that time, he was arrested 29 times over the course of a little under 400 days of protest. What they said would take years or even generations took about a year to happen. So my question is, why are all the white people on this city council trying to, or why the people on their city council try to stop him? The answer is called bounded rationality, a term in political science. The idea that the decision-making process, the rationality of individuals is limited to the information they have, the cognitive limitations of their own mind, and the finite amount of time they have with which to make a decision. We like to think that we're always making the best decisions. Sadly, all the scientific evidence says that we pick an option of the available options. This, combined with the idea that historically when change happens, it happens very fast. You, this city council, have a problem, and I don't think you even realize it. Your city is sitting on a powder keg. The fuse is lit, and you have no idea how long it is. You have a very violent police force that's known to use excessive force and violence, far beyond that of every other department in the state, setting a second record lawsuit that's in the courts right now, and scandal after scandal, and this body wants to drag its feet on the idea of change. King chose to fight in Birmingham, Alabama, because he thought it was the worst city in the country at the time of the protests. A good argument can be made that the Springfield is currently the worst city in the entire state of Oregon right now. So my question to you is this: what's it going to take to get you to decide to enact change? Because if you don't choose to, there's going to be an event. And when that event happens, change will happen very quickly. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Arwen Moss Despain, followed by Kirsten London. And Arwen, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. My name is Arwen Moss Despain. I'm Executive Co-Director of Carry It Forward, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the City Council tonight. I'm here to briefly address comments that are made in the packet that you'll be reading about Carry It Forward and our proposal, and I'm happy to answer further questions as needed. So at the June 9th CDAC meeting, we requested a consideration for $185,000 in CDBG funds to continue services to Springfield's unhoused community, including public showers, food pantry, case management, car camp hosting, outreach, and inclement weather activation for the rest of 2021. Although the CDAC recommends directly funding our efforts, city staff expressed concerns for limited capacity to manage funds, coupled with doubt sort of in our ability to comply with contractual obligations of federal dollars. And therefore, it was suggested that funds be allocated to the county, who will manage it through the RFP process. So I'm sure there are benefits and drawbacks to either strategy, but I'm here to speak to the benefits of funding us and other local organizations directly. So as an organization that is active on the streets of Springfield every day, we're able to mobilize quickly, and we know the people and areas they inhabit. We are able to reach people who cannot and or choose not to access traditional congregate emergency events produced by the county. Over the weekend, for example, we quickly coordinated teams and routes to distribute water to 70 people in Springfield, and this effort was in collaboration with the City of Springfield and community partners. Similarly, last fall and winter, we mobilized quickly for fire response and cold weather activations, helping to prevent hospitalizations and deaths associated with smoke and cold weather. Conversely, county turnover and processes delay funding and may impact our ability to continue serving Springfield, depending on where the county decides to focus the funding. Concerns about our ability to meet contractual obligations are based in contextual factors that I am totally happy to explain and are currently being rectified after our recent audit. And yes, I will say we are a small homegrown organization that is relatively new to government contracting, but we are totally transparent. We care about quality and improvement, and we are dedicated to making sure Springfield is not overlooked. So I thank you for your time and consideration.
Our next speaker is Kirsten London, followed by Zia Wang. And Kirsten, your microphone you should be able to unmute at this point.
Hi, good evening. First of all, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about the CDBG funding that we have applied for. I work for Youth Era. We, formerly Youth Move, we are an organization that wants to empower young people and create breakthrough through dedicated systems that serve them. We operate drop-in centers, one here in Eugene, 4 others throughout the state of Oregon, and 1 randomly in Pennsylvania. We offer peer support, wraparound services, and working collaboratively with youth and young adults to ensure that their voice is part of the process. Our big project that I've been brought on to help spearhead, and I'm very excited about, is we are getting a youth hostel up and running that will serve Lane County youth. And we are asking for City Council to approve $45,000 to help us with those operations, specifically to help with an FTE that will be focused on working with Springfield youth. We currently partner with McKinney Vinto's 15th Night's expanding into Springfield. So we're really excited about the opportunities in terms of serving Springfield youth and families. I do want to say I have almost 17 years of experience operating runaway and homeless youth programming throughout Lane County, including operating a shelter services. And I am so excited about this new opportunity that's going to fill an identified service gap and the focus that we will have on Springfield youth. The CDBG, or City of Springfield funding, will ensure that we can continue to offer our great services to Springfield youth. I thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Zia Wang, followed by Emily Peterson. Zia, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. So my comment tonight is pretty simple. Just want to follow up the question I think I comment, I think 2 meetings ago about the culture change. I tried to reach out to the counselors, back forth emails, but I never got the agenda, how they look like. So I just want to repeat the questions about the culture change is, what the cultural change that it look like for you, and how to make it happen, and what other steps can lead us to make a culture change in Springfield. Because Springfield, it's white, local culture right now is a white supremacist dominant community. I have a friend came over to visit from California last week, and Springfield is so well known for the fascist based and the white supremacy dominated. So he requested me to take a tour for him to drive around the Springfield for visit this well-known, white supremacy and the fascists in the town. So, and we have the fascists, right, stopped in the Washington, at the Washington, D.C. And also we have the fascist, the white supremacists stormed, Capitol building in Oregon. So my question really is, I don't want to hear people tell me, say that your culture change is different as my culture change. I'm not asking that. I'm asking about what your culture change that look like, okay? So I hope I can hear some, brief, at least brief picture, how they look like. And I would like to get agenda to support how the city council want to make the culture change. We need to stop ending the white supremacist dominant community culture in this city. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Emily Peterson, followed by Amy Cothran. And Emily should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So I'm Emily Peterson. I live in Ward 6. I just wanted to start with, I really appreciate our police department. I appreciate everything they do and sacrifice for us. I know that They put their lives on their line every single day. And I really appreciate that. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I wanted to talk about the fireworks that people are trying to ban up in the Thurston Hills. I'm an admin for many of the Thurston sites. And I will tell you that a vast majority of the people do not want a ban on it. We understand the risk. However, illegal fireworks, I'm not talking about that. That obviously should not happen. But I'm talking about the ones that are legal, the little ground bloom, the little lightning flash, the stinking sparkler that my 5- and 6-year-old like to play with. That's mesmerizing to them. That is so much fun. And I really can't express how it seems like our freedoms are just being taken away one by one by one. And it feels like this is one of the last ones. And people who are responsible keep hoses out. They keep fire extinguishers out. They keep buckets of water. As soon as it goes out, you pick it up and you put it in the bucket of water. And that's how I've always done it. I was raised in a small town in Minnesota, and that's how we did it there. And that's how we do it here. My husband grew up in Springfield. He's lived here. We came back from Seattle, and he's lived here his entire life before that. And that's the way it was for him. It was a small town. It was a great town. That's why we came back to raise our kids here. But like I said, a vast majority does not want them banned. A small majority do, and I've seen that they're working on trying to get them banned. So I just really wanted to reach out to you guys and let you know that please let us celebrate our holiday. That's it. Thank you guys very much.
Our next speaker is Amy Cothran, followed by Rodney Peterson. And just a quick update, we do have 48 attendees in the audience tonight, just for your information. And Amy, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Yep, y'all can hear me?
We can.
Great. First, I would like to address the previous speaker. Drive 30 miles, out east and ask them if they think that, starting extra fires in dry season is a smart idea. But of course, once again, I've come here tonight to speak to council about SPD and their planned culture change. Every time I've spoken to the council, asking how they plan to do this, what type of time frame they're looking for, any type of details aside from trust us, we're doing it, I've been met with nothing. No one on the council has addressed this question. So I'm guessing, based on your lack of answers, that you don't have a plan, and, admitting that it would be great. And, from there we can move forward. I know that you're looking at stuff that was recommended by these different reports, but the biggest problems are not based on bad policy. It's based on poor leadership and a lack of accountability through SPD. We have the largest lawsuit on Oregon's record. We're about to have the second biggest lawsuit on Oregon's record. And neither of those incidents were based on poor policy. They weren't based on poor, never mind. They weren't based on poor policy. They were based on officers who thought they could get away with something that they couldn't, who had a happy trigger finger or decided they could block a road from people and oppress people's First Amendment rights with no repercussions. So I do think Chief Scheer has been a great presence so far, and that I really hope that your next hire will take care of the leadership part. The accountability has to start now, or this will continue to happen. Once you have those accountability issues and leadership issues figured out, talk to the people who are most affected by police violence in your community. Talk to the lower income people, talk to the people of color, talk to the LGBT community. Talk to the patriots too. Talk about if they're affected by anything, because this is something that we want to fix for everyone, not us. And if anyone would like to question my motivation, question my morals, I'm transgender.
officers in Springfield killed a transgender person, which led to the biggest lawsuit in state history. I believe that if I still lived in Springfield and officers saw me commenting, saw that I had a complaint, that I would probably not be safe. So that's why. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Rodney Peterson, followed by Stacy Holt. And Rodney, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hey, good night, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name is Rodney Peterson, live in Ward 6. Grew up in Springfield, born here, graduated in 95. Left about that time. I've lived in Illinois, Mississippi, Florida, a couple different cities in Texas, Washington. Been overseas for a few years. I wanted to talk about the fireworks ban. You know, my kids deserve to have a patriotic 4th. I'm a veteran. I am responsible. We do little kid fireworks in our street. We have buckets of water. We have a fire hose. We wet everything down. We have sprinklers running. The fact that there's a small group out there that wants to take this away from my kids and treat everybody like idiots is I just cannot understand how people can think this is okay. You know, we're not shooting illegal fireworks up into the fir trees. We're doing little stuff on the ground responsibly, like good Americans. I just want my kids to have the same 4th that we all have had growing up. We have all had 4th of Julys during heat waves when it's hot. So I appreciate you guys' time. I want to say Springfield PD is great. Never had an issue. Got a ticket for doing something dumb I deserved. I think Springfield PD is great. I wanted to thank the city council for giving me time to speak tonight. Please don't let a small group of people take away our freedoms that we deserve as Americans. Thanks, you guys. Have a good night.
All right, so we're right about 20 minutes. It looks like we've got 3 folks left, and I just want to pause and take a look and make sure council's still comfortable going forward.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Continue on, Neil.
Okay, Mayor, no problem. Our next speaker is Stacy Holt, followed by Timothy Morris. And Stacy, your microphone, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there. Okay, first of all, I am so exhausted calling into these meetings and hearing the same voices over and over again with the same complaints about our amazing police department. I didn't call in to speak on this, but I feel the need right now to say thank you, Springfield Police Department, for doing everything you do every single day. You are appreciated. Okay, now why I called in. I'll tell you what, the hoopla around fireworks this year has been huge. I get it. What our community experienced last year during the fires was unprecedented. For many, it was traumatic. And while I do understand this, I also know that most adults in Springfield are responsible, especially in regards to fireworks. In my 30+ years in the Thurston neighborhood, I have never known a year that hasn't been a safe show of freedom and independence. What better day to celebrate freedom than July 4th? Yeah, people have for years set fireworks off, even illegals. I trust the people, the adults, to do so safely. I also personally take precautions that day on unusually hot summer days, like keeping water buckets nearby, watering the lawn well, and even spraying down the roof. You know, there's a lot of precautions that community members can take to make it safe for everyone. I implore the city council to not make rash decisions to appease a minority of community members by instilling a fireworks ban. To be frank, I suspect a ban would just make people feel the need to show their freedom and independence even more after having so many freedoms taken away over the last year. I don't know about you, but I've lived through a lot of Independence Days. Let's trust our community adults to continue adulting the way they have shown us that they always have in the past. On another note, after camping over Memorial Weekend, I realized just how poorly our forest floors are managed. It's terrible. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I'm not just talking the areas where there were fire damage. Our forest floors are messy. It's just hot, tender. It's tender, waiting for the next lightning strike. Perhaps those fearing fires from the fireworks should actually be looking to legislatures for, you know, fixing the forest floors problem. You know, a little bit of forest management in Oregon would go a long way. I'll relinquish the rest of my time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Timothy Morris, followed by Thomas Lawrence. And Timothy, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Fantastic. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. It's great to see y'all again. My name is Timothy Morris. Should I just check in? This is a good time to talk about the CDBG C3. Okay, perfect. So my name is Timothy Morris. I'm the executive director of the Springfield Eugene Tenant Association. And I'm just drawn to anything that's acronymed CETA. So that's where I'm coming from. But I wanted to say thank you for considering CETA's application to the CDBG funds. I know the board of directors and myself are incredibly excited at the prospect of working together to help keep renters off the streets and in their homes. CETA has reached nearly 1,500 renter households since we have been founded back in April of 2019. And as the only free tenant-specific hotline in our area, we have quickly become an invaluable resource to the community. Over 70% of our callers identify as either low income or severely low income. And the city of Springfield as a population as a whole is nearly 50% renters. So almost half the city of Springfield are renters themselves. And as I'm sure you know, even pre-pandemic, renters have been faced with a significant amount of economic disparities and very little housing options. This includes PSU reported information about severely rent-burdened tenants who are paying over 50% of their income just to rent, and with Springfield at nearly 25% of the renters in that in the city of Springfield are severely low income. I'm highlighting all of these facts because I want to really showcase and outline that even beyond the economic the economy opening up post-pandemic, and even with the end of the eviction moratorium, renters will be faced with long-term economic and financial difficulties for quite some time and will need every resource available to keep them safe and off the streets. CETA has established a tenant hotline that any renter can call in with questions, concerns, and be able to have their issues answered. And that's what we provide to the city of Springfield. That's what we provide to our community. And so we're excited at the prospect of working together. We're excited at the prospect of providing information and data and ideas from our tenant hotline on how best to serve those most vulnerable in the tenant community. Thank you again for your consideration. And if there's any questions or concerns, I'm always available. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Thomas Lawrence, followed by what looks like our last speaker who has a hand raised, and that is Mary Bell. Thomas, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
All right, thank you. I too would like to kind of talk about the culture change phrase that keeps getting thrown about because it feels like a placeholder. In the last few meetings, we've talked a lot about fireworks, and and those same people continue to talk about how much they love SPD because they're not having any issues. But the person just a couple speeches ago just basically pointed out exactly what they think about that, which is if you just try to ban them, if you try to restrict them to make them safer, we might even just go more overboard on it to show you how much we don't actually care about laws, rules, and regulation. That is the culture change we need to address. I haven't had an issue with police does not mean police is good. In fact, it makes it even worse because it shows that police can be very good and caring when they want to. SPD really, really cares about the people out in Thurston, the people that are white, straight, etc. We all know this. The All Lives Matter rally that was out there the other day, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-maskers, the please don't teach children about racism in school crowd. 3 of those members were at the Salem Capitol smashing it up the day that they broke into it. 3 of them have been arrested in Eugene or Springfield for assault in the last year during protests. And as someone who was at many of the Black Lives Matter rallies last year, I saw a very different handling of it for how many police were out there monitoring them. That is the culture change that we need to address. The response from the city has 2 different responses, or from the police department, sorry. There are 2 different responses for who is complaining, for who is talking, for who has whatever issues. And that is the change we need to address. And we cannot address it by we're working on it. We'll change the culture and then not having a plan. So we have some time off before we come back for the next sessions. Please come back with some action steps. Here is where we are, here is where we want to go, here is what we will do to get there, not just trust us, we're working on it and we hear you. That is not going to cut it for me and the people that agree on my side or for the people on the other side. Everybody here should want to get somewhere. We need steps to get there, not just these open-ended, oh, culture change this, culture change that. Please come back with some steps, some solutions, some ideas. I too, so far, like what I hear from Chief Shearer. I have no idea if he is interested or willing to take the job after, but I do think that he seems to truly get it and understand. Hopefully that is taken into consideration, and hopefully everybody on both sides of this aisle can come together on something. But so far, this meeting alone and every other one that's talked about fireworks has shown you just how much a certain portion of this population does not want anything to change because their lives are fine, and they think that means council's doing great, police department is great, everything is great, while another group of the population is continuing saying we are being attacked, we are scared of this town, we are being assaulted, etc. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Mary Bell. And Mary, you should be able to unmute your microphone now. And Mary, we're not hearing you if you're trying to talk.
Are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mary Bell, and I live in Ward 2. And I would like to speak to the council today regarding the issues both within the culture of Springfield and within the police department. We talk time and time again about culture change, and that is a reflection upon the city and the individual members of that society. Police are individual members of that society, and they too need to go through a culture change. Police reform is something different. When we talk about police reform, we're talking about addressing the specific problems within our policies that allow our police to act as autonomous authority figures within the city and address issues as they reasonably see fit. This is inappropriate. It is wrong. There is no accountability. I have written to the city council, to the mayor, to the city manager numerous times and received very little response. One response was an auto reply to explain to me that that account is not checked 24 hours a day, which tells me that the city manager is doing a great job at checking in on other issues within our city and our police department. I want to know what our hiring practices are for representing BIPOC. I want to know what our practices are for representing women. I want to know how we're addressing the issues within the police department that have allowed them to get away with sexual harassment and misogyny. I want to know why when I called the police department to have them respond to a domestic violence dispute issue, I was made to feel the victim and escorted from my property as quickly as possible so that the Springfield police officers could return to Eugene to help them with the riots that night due to BLM protests. I want to know why you say there's no collusion with the white supremacy population within this city when there clearly is. I want to know why the mayor says that white supremacy and political violence are not welcome in this city when just last week, a white supremacy rally was held inches from the city door. Thank you.
Mayor, those are all the speakers we have this evening under business from the audience.
All right, thank you. I will open it back up for council response and see if anybody wants to make some comments. Damien.
Hi, first of all, thank you all for the comments. A couple of things. And so I think there's a difference between a change in culture. And I do agree that it involves the whole city and in some ways the whole county and the state. But you can put an actual plan to that. But when it comes to cultural change that are going to welcome minoritized individuals to come here and stay here, that's not something you can necessarily put on paper. And there are things that are already in place that you might not ever know about it because you're not a part of that. The truth of the matter is, we do all have different cultures, and that's okay. I mean, I can talk on and on about how having more Black fraternities are going to retain and recruit more Black students and are going to create spaces for them to feel welcome, but you probably don't care about that. You know, I can talk about how there's a list at U of O of all the Black people that have left in the last 10 years, and it gets longer, and how, you know, all of us are 1 foot out the door. And you know, but once again, if you're not a part of that, you're not going to know about it. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people are very humble, and they might be doing stuff behind the scenes that you might not know about. I mean, as far as in a council position, you know, realize that sometimes just, you know, in the last few times when I've spoken, you know, you all talk about BIPOC and this and that. Well, I'm a Black man, and when I speak the truth of several people who look just like me, I get shut down, I get called angry, I get called defensive. And so it's like, this culture change means that we all have to, and there's no hierarchy. There's no person who is better than the other person. And a lot of it starts with self-reflection. As I said before, you are not going to get a plan with everything that's going to potentially change when it comes to culture, especially that culture that's going to recruit and retain diverse populations. That's impossible to do. But there are a lot of things that are happening, whether it's at the city level, whether it's at the county level, whether it's at the state level, that you might not be involved in. And honestly, it might not ever directly affect you, but it's going to affect somebody else. I mean, I wish I could give a better answer, but a culture change is not something that is going to be written on paper. And if you're looking for a document, then you're not going to get it. And some things that you will. I mean, I can provide you with a list of things that I've done personally since I've been here that have changed the culture, but it's not about me. It's about us. And I'm not one to toot my own horn about what I've done and what I want to do all the time, but you best believe that some of these conversations will happen, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. I know earlier somebody talked about the civil rights movement and MLK. And I mean, the civil rights movement was extremely sexist, classist, and homophobic. And if you go back to the South, I don't really know what's changed. And so, you know, we can compare our times to how this worked and how that worked, but we need to look deeper sometimes. And I think oftentimes we don't do that. We don't do self-reflection, and we have a tendency to be upset when you don't see something right away. And, you know, I wish I can say give you time, but obviously that's not good enough for a lot of you. And that's okay. Just know that there are a lot of us that are doing things 24 hours a day in our daily lives, as well as our jobs, to make things happen that are going to ultimately change the culture. And it might not be something you see, you know, like you might not realize that they have Black hair care products in Fred Meyer, but I will. And so I repeat, and I close this off by saying culture change is going to look different for each one of us. Thank you.
Leonard.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'd also like to thank everybody for their comments tonight. I did hear a couple of commenters pinpointing lack of leadership as the culprit in the downslide of the police department. And I'd just like to say that I think the most direct way to deal with a lapse in leadership in the city is to change the leadership. And I think we're very early in the process of changing the leadership, but I think the signs are promising. The implementation of the body cams are also an excellent sign. I think that we're going to be a lot more transparent as a result of that. A comprehensive review of the uses of force is going to be a very promising sign toward increasing transparency and toward increasing culture change. I don't know how else to put it. If there's a better way, then I would certainly welcome any kind of input. But I will say that the signs that I'm getting from the new chief and from the general direction of the department since he has taken the interim chief has taken office are enormously auspicious, and I'm hoping that we're going to be here in another year talking about how much better things are. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, so
no, yes.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Sorry.
Nope.
It's very awkward not being on camera. I just wanted to speak up as far as not allowing for time. The interim chief has only been on since what, the 1st of June or thereabout. So, and maybe a month total. In order to change anything, or you have to even recognize what's there as to what remedies might be needed, or you have to recognize the people that are working under you in order to be able to recognize what's good, what's bad, what needs to be gotten rid of. I mean, Chief Scheer just showed up. He's still trying to get oriented to whoever's in the department and the policies and all that. I think we have him for a reason. We have his leadership for a reason as the interim chief. And I think we need to give him the expectations that because he was brought in as our interim chief, he knows what to do, and we need to give him room to do it. And then if we have issues or concerns, but we've got to give him time. He's got to get oriented to the city. He was not familiar from the interview that I had with him. He didn't know Springfield before he got here. So there's a whole new world for him to even just understand before he starts to make changes. And he is dedicated enough and devoted enough to the department and their job in order to be able to do it. He wants to do it the right way. And in order for him to be able to do that, he has to be able to understand what he's working with. So I think we just need to give him time on the reforms that people have been concerned about or questions about. It's not that we're not concerned about it, but it takes time to do anything like that. That's all.
Steve?
I've been pushing for change for the past year, not quietly, but sort of quietly with the council, and been hoping that we would go faster and faster, and we haven't, but we have been going. And we have a new chief there, and I've talked to him, and things are going to be done. I'm very optimistic with him. So I hope people out there will give us a chance with him. And I think they'll be impressed with what we have. That's it.
All right, so I had 3 quick comments. One of them, I believe it was Mary Bell. You had some questions for the city manager. If you want to write them down, I will forward them to the correct email. There's an email box in there, and it sounds like you got pointed in the right direction. And I will make a virtual introduction to you guys so that you can get a response. Second thing, I know we all want this to go quicker. Like, we want to be done with this, and it's going to take the time it's going to take. And I think the bar that we've got to push ourselves is it's going to take as much time. We are going to get there, but we've got to move through this as reasonably and effectively, and choose the word that you want to insert it as quickly as possible. But that, to make it really stick, it really does just take time. And I know that I'm an impatient person, and it frustrates me sometimes because, I want it to be done so we can move on to really amazing things, but this has got to get done. And so when you guys speak of your impatience through this, I hear you, and I'm impatient too, but it's going to take the time it's going to take. And what I would encourage people to do is just simply keep showing up, keep pointing out places where we get it right, point out places where we don't get it right, because those are the points that we really can take a step back from a policy perspective and start to talk about, okay, where do we even go from here? And then, the one quick story that I thought was really, and professionally, I work sort of in process improvement and change. And things go the speed we're going to go. And I wanted to at least just point out two things, right? Because the real check that we need to make right now is, are we just simply moving? If we are moving the direction that we want, then we can work on speeding it up, right? But if we're standing still, that's not going to cut it. So it's just going to take a couple of steps. But I wanted to at least point out two things that I thought were effective. You know, Saturday we were walking around during the race walk, and I had people walk up to me and they had business cards from police, right? I know that seems small, it seems simple, it seems hard to execute, but like just to see a couple of business cards that are out there, right? That's the kind of place where we're going to want to just integrate the change in there, right? And the other piece that I thought was really effective is just how much water I saw them handing out, right? Like, and again, if we want to get to a point where we're caring for everybody in the community, right, it's going to take all these steps combined. And I know that folks are going to say, hey, that's never quite enough. But we got to start walking towards this direction one step at a time. We got to do it together. I just want to know that we hear you. All right, next item, please.
Mayor, the next item is ordinances. You have one ordinance tonight, a fire code ordinance number 3, an ordinance adopting the Springfield 2019 Fire Code by adopting, amending, adding, and deleting sections of the State of Oregon 2019 Fire Code, providing the issuance of permits and collection of fees, therefore repealing ordinance number 6334, adopted February 2nd, 2015, and providing an effective date. Roy Emery should be here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Roy Emery, and I'm the interim fire marshal for Eugene Springfield Fire. There were 2 questions from our last session related to the adoption of the proposed code. And the first question was asking what were the specific new amendments. And there were 4 new amendments. The first one is operational permits are required for unique conditions. The second is emergency responder radio coverage, allows payment of the mobile emergency responder radio coverage fee that the council approved in 2019. The adoption of Appendix H, which gives instructions for a required hazardous materials management plan and a hazardous materials inventory statement, and adoption of Appendix L, which requires certain new buildings to provide an air supply for firefighter self-contained breathing apparatus. And the second question surrounded the false alarm penalty. And so in 2015, the Springfield Fire Code adopted a false alarm penalty at 2 or more alarms. And this proposed code is 3 or more alarms. So it increases it by 1. And so if we do we have any other questions?
Councilor Cuccineri.
First, thank you so very much for articulating those to me. And I appreciate that a lot. It makes a lot of sense to me. And if I was incorrect in my recollection of the fire codes, I apologize. So I appreciate this coming back around. And I have just one question, sir, if I can. Under attachment 1, page 7 of 15, you'll see general definitions about the 6th paragraph down where it says open burning. And I can't see where, it's just a definition and I can't see where it's related. I wanted to find in this code, but it's so big in regards to the backyard burn, so to speak. Does any new changes or amendments in this code alter what's currently lawful in Springfield, such as the greater than half an acre are allowed to burn yard debris?
There's no change to Springfield's backyard burning rules.
Okay, that's what I was saying. I just couldn't see it, but I did see the definition of open burning, and it doesn't look like it includes those type of backyard burns, but it does mention LRAPA's authority.
Correct.
So, okay, I appreciate it very much. I really do.
Any other questions? Steve, you're on.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 3 for the fire code.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Councillor Pitts.
Aye.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Rodley.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Aye.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the City Council. Item number 1, committee appointments, mayor, council committee assignment revision, and Mayor Van Gordon and AJ Knights are the staff for this item.
You know, we make a great comedy routine as well. So we just simply have to validate by motion the committee assignments. I added Corey to the Human Services Committee. We had a budget committee member rotate off, and I made the decision to replace that citizen member with a city councilor. So does anybody have questions? And there's no other changes on this list.
Okay. I'd like a motion to accept the revised mayor and council assignments dated June 28th, 2021.
Second.
All right, Neil, could you call the roll?
Councillor Pitts.
Aye.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Rodley.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Aye.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Next item is any other business from the City Council.
Do we have other business or announcements from anybody? Corey.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes or seconds, because I tend to ramble a little bit. We are coming to the end of Pride Month, and I just wanted to take a moment to sort of acknowledge that. And I appreciate that we as a city made a statement. I really appreciate our internal diversity committee that worked on the language around that, because Springfield hasn't always been so welcoming to our LGBTQ plus community members. And I wanted to just call out that, you know, Pride Month commemorates the riots of 1969 and is an opportunity for us to take stock and see how far we've come and how far we need to go. And I know as we move into talking about the CDBG funding and particularly unhoused youth, some of you may or may not know that up to 40% of our homeless or unhoused youth identify as LGBTQ plus and are more likely to become homeless at a younger age than other young folks. And additionally, 1 in 4 teens who comes out to their parents still now is likely to find themselves forced to leave the home. So as we talk about unhoused youth, I just want to hold a pin for the fact that a big majority of our unhoused youth are kids who are LGBTQ+. So while we may be celebrating Pride, there is still a lot of work to do and a lot of work to go. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to just call that out.
Perfect. Anybody else? Next item, please.
Next item under business from the city manager, item number 1, community development block grant, coronavirus CDBG-CB3 funds allocation. And Aaron Feitfield is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here tonight asking for a final decision on the allocation of federal community development block grant coronavirus funds. These funds are primarily targeted for low-income households, must address impacts from the coronavirus. And as federal funds, they are also subject to federal regulations. Previously, you had discussed a draft allocation during your May 24th work session. That draft proposal was made available to the public for comment. Council's Community Development Advisory Committee met on June 9th, held a public hearing, and made a recommendation for funding. In the packet, you'll see that recommendation. You'll also see a summary of the process, including the comments received on the draft, which also include a new request for funding from Carry It Forward. During the May work session, Council also had some questions for additional or some requests for additional information on certain projects, and that additional information is provided in the table starting on page 3 of attachment 1. I don't know if AJ can share the screen to looking at the table on attachment 2. But I just want to point out a few things between the council's original draft allocation and the advisory committee recommendation. They're actually pretty similar. Both allocations prioritize public services for the unhoused primarily. Yes, so here's the option 1 is derived from the council draft allocation, and option 2 is the CDAC recommendation. So you'll see some similarities. I would like to point out these funds are one-time funds as a response to the coronavirus. So there are some differences than normal CDBG funds. One, we have an opportunity to fund human services in a way that we don't normally. There isn't a cap or a limit on how much you can allocate. So that's why you see so many requests right now coming forward that maybe normally we don't see through the CDBG process. So that is new for the city. It highlights also the need that exists. I will say all of the requests and activities are like amazing sort of ways that I think our community is proposing to respond to the need. That there is always more need than available funding. I think the big difference between the two columns you'll see have to do with how to provide resources to the unhoused in a general population. So Lane County, part of their broader strategic plan is to provide in-depth case management through street outreach to the unhoused with the goal of placing folks, or connecting them to shelter options or permanent housing. You'll see that request in column 1, and they would administer that through an RFP, and it would be sort of awarded to a local agency. And then the other request you see is direct services and resources for the unhoused at $185,000. That is a request that Carry It Forward put forward in the advisory committee public hearing. I just want to highlight that and say, I think the need is there. I think they're doing amazing work. I will say my best advice as the CDBG administrator is that this is a new request and a new agency, and we have not had a chance to evaluate the request itself. And so if that is an activity you want to support, that's great. But I would just ask that the city be allowed to do an RFP, even if we do it directly rather than through Lane County. So I'm here for questions. Again, I'm asking for a final allocation. So that final column, if we could put in final dollars that add up to about $366,000. And AJ, I have a copy of this in an Excel file that I'm happy to share so we can do it in real time.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Question, Leonard?
Yeah, is it too early to make recommendations?
Well, you just need to slow walk it, give her a chance to get the Excel out so we could start with it.
Okay. Wait, I see it up. Can we proceed?
Are you ready, Aaron? You're still on mute, so I'm going to take that as born ready.
My dog's barking, sorry. Yes, I'm happy to plug in some numbers.
All right, go for it, Leonard.
Well, thanks. I'd like to advocate for option 2. I know that there are hesitations about Carry It Forward on the basis of the newness and the relative size of the operation. I've had the pleasure of working with them on several occasions now, and I can assure you that they're a very lean and a very efficient operation. They have squeezed every nickel out of the money that they've been granted, and I think they deserve the full amount. I'd also like to advocate on behalf of Springfield Eugene Tenants Association. They've done work that I think is admirable and much needed, and I'd like to make sure that they get the money too. That's all. Thanks.
Steve?
I was a council liaison on that committee, and I'll tell you, I've never seen a more dedicated group of people look at every issue before they made the recommendation. And so I hope that the council also feels the same as what we've come up with.
Okay, Anybody else to give some direction before we get to some motions? Corey?
Yes. I'm fine with section 2 or the second one. Although I would like to see some of that $10,000 funding for fair housing education and training. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the work that the Springfield Eugene Tenants Association is doing. And I would be okay with, not funding at the full amount in terms of carry it forward. And I want to also I tend to lean into staff who work so closely with this work. So I would want to support Aaron's recommendation that there was an RFP process and there was a way to sort of vet. I agree with Leonard that they're doing really great work and they are a young and emerging organization. And so, working in terms of government contracts and fee for service and things like that can be a little bit complicated, and we want to make sure that they have what they need to succeed. And so I would absolutely support that. So I'm looking at mostly number 2, but a bit of a hybrid. So maybe taking a little money from Catholic Community Services, or to do that $10,000. That's my suggestion.
Got my hand up.
Hang on, Marilee. Joe's first.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, before I comment about the allocations, I would like to know why Aaron thinks that the city should do the RFP process and not Lane County.
Oh, in an ideal world, Lane County, I think, could handle this. Lane County has stated they wouldn't. I guess it would be a conversation on the direct services and resources question. That's not exactly part of their strategic plan. The case management for shelter and permanent housing is part of their plan. They said, yes, we're already doing that throughout the county, but providing direct resources like a shower trailer is not something they would necessarily manage. I think if it became part of a winter strategies effort, then it kind of gets into an interesting, more part of what they're working on, but that's where it would be managed by ourselves, because Lane County, it's not part of their workload.
So, okay, so it doesn't apply to them is what you're saying, basically. Is that right?
Well, like Lane County's tricky,
it's not their forte.
They've chosen, it's not a priority for them.
Okay. So they're not real interested in doing that. So right. So that's interesting now so now we have these funds, and typically we would refer them to Lane County for RFP process, but now it's back in our lap, and that, which puts me in a little bit of a quandary. It's kind of not, I don't like the flavor of that, because we also are going to have staff time and to administer that RFP, and I don't see a budget for that, except for off to the right, it says $2,000 out of, well, 10 grand out of the 185,000 that unhoused services is that the cost, or it just seems like those costs, our city costs, are a little bit light?
Those are guesstimates. So I will say you'll see a very thin line under row 18, says city administrative costs. Option 1, we put TBD because we weren't sure what the total list was going to be. Option 2, we built in those city costs during the CDAC meeting. So we were adding in the estimated cost on the right, and those totals add up to the 19,000 that were chosen for the activities in option 2. But you're right. I mean, even though there may be funding to pay for staff costs, it doesn't mean we've added staff to do these things.
So then how do those numbers add up on the city administration costs? If we go with column 2, it looks as though we got 2,000, 5,000, 2,000, that's 9. And then you got 10 for 19, and then you got 2,000, which adds up to 21,000.
That's fair. That's a good catch. I did see that later. Right. So if we do want to fund it at 21, we would take 2 away from something else. Thank you for.
Actually, it's 25.
Pointing that out.
Well, not the one at the top wouldn't apply if we go with column 2, option 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 21.
Okay, so I do numbers. And then I'm looking, so I support what Councilor Steer had mentioned and said, and I think that, I don't know if I want to move any monies around other than that. And I do strongly, I won't support it. I can't support it unless we go through the RFP process on all of those. That's where I'm at. But as far as the use of the money, I think that's great. And I appreciate the work that they're doing. That's fine. But I want an RFP process to make sure it's done right and fair. And then we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. And I support how option 2 is funded.
All right, I've got Marilee first, and I'll come back to Corey.
Yes, I like the way the option 2 is lined up as far as the dollars that are allocated. I think I'm very appreciative of what CETA is doing. Springfield Eugene Tennis Association. I think they're offering a tremendous service. One of the things that I might suggest to them, since I have an opportunity to say something at the moment, is that in our executive committee meeting of HSC in the first week of June, one of the comments that was made was the Oregon Law Center can be helpful. And so they might be a great partner as well for CETA to be able to be partnered with, or at least, be able to be in communication with each other as much as Tim's comments tonight about it being able to utilize the city of Springfield as well. So just a side information for you in case you don't have it. You may already have that. The other thing that I would like to see, the reason I would like to see an RFP, in a way, when I first looked at the material, I was a little surprised to see the suggestion. And so I had to think about it. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, these are one-time dollars. These are dollars that are going to be allocated, are going out. We're not looking at having them available next year or the year after or the year after. These are one-time dollars. I would very much like to see, as a result maybe of doing RFPs, the insertion of, okay, if we do this, how are we going to go forward? How are we going to set up programs or do something that can be sustainable in some way? Probably one of the most discouraging things in my past, when I was working as a family counselor in social services, was the fact that it's very hard once you offer things to someone or a group to sustain them or keep them in place so the person can continue to be successful. And it usually involves a whole lot of interaction, not only from the people providing the services, but the people that are receiving them and all the ones that are helping in the middle. So I think I would like to see an RFP process so that we know that we are being able to set up something that we can hopefully continue. I like the services that are being provided. I'd like to see RFPs.
Corey?
So I just need some clarification because I might be confused. Some of these, because I know that I snuck and went to the CDAC meeting. So some of these were already in response to our original RFP. So like the Springfield Eugene Tennis Association, the Daisy Chain, these already were folks that applied and responded to an RFP. We are just, there's a couple in here where you say, I think maybe, and tell me if I'm wrong, maybe it's only Carry It Forward that wasn't part of that initial vetting process. And so that's why you're talking about having an RFP for them as opposed to, because I don't think, I also want to call out that we have capacity within the city and also these smaller organizations. So asking them to submit a whole new RFP for the money that they already, basically a grant proposal for money that they already requested. Am I kind of on track with how that went, or am I off?
Yeah, no, thanks for the clarification. My request is that if you wanted to fund the direct services and resources for the unhoused, that be the one project that go out for an RFP, because the others have already gone through the evaluation process. except the CCS request at the bottom has gone in the past, and the city is currently funding that. This would just be an extension of services. So the one unknown, or the two unknown really, are the street outreach that Lane County has already said they'd be doing through an RFP if you wanted to go that route, or the services, which was not requested for an RFP. I'm just advising staff that let's go through an RFP process. So yes, it would just be the one RFP, depending on which one.
Line 13 would be the only one you're recommending an RFP on, or line 12, depending on which one.
Exactly. Yes. Thanks. Yes, exactly. Thanks for the clarification.
So I think I hear a sort of framing up around, a version of option 2. And I think the only sort of difference is Corey wants to slice some money off and put it into the Fair Housing Council. And I don't hear anybody else saying that. But we're very consistent that we want whatever the money is, we want it to be an RFP. Okay. So does anybody have comments, or do we want to try to form that into some sort of motion?
Sean, I didn't hear, I heard a buzz in my computer, somebody's phone or something, so I didn't hear a couple of your words. And I think you were talking about with Corey's recommendation to move money. I didn't hear what you said about that.
I'm saying that the only thing that we haven't really sorted out or talked about is really whether or not we're going to fund line 8. And I hear Corey want to fund line 8. And I didn't hear that come up with anybody else. But
I heard people wanting to support column 2.
Correct.
So which doesn't show moving that money.
Correct. But and Corey, jump in here if I heard you wrong. You wanted column 2 with money for fair housing.
Yes, that's what I was advocating. And like you said, I'm the only one who did. I wanted to have that 10,000 for fair housing, and that would mean maybe decreasing whatever those lines are down there in 13 or 12 at the bottom for the RFP, the unhoused services.
I actually support Councilor Riley. I mean, is there a way that maybe, even if we don't fund the full amount, that every organization that we're giving money to, could we cut 1,000 or 1,500 off and provide that money to them? I mean, once again, it's been a while since we discussed this, but I'm curious, is that exact amount of money needed, or could they do just as much with 1,000 less? Because I mean, I'd be willing to, if possible, move some of that money upwards and give them at least 5,000 or 6,000. So I do support Councilor Riley on that one.
Okay, so Steve, do you want to try to form a motion? I only hear 2 for moving money to fair housing. So
no. Okay, let's see here. Then we're going to do fair housing. What are we going to pull it from? Corey?
I'm going to suggest we pull it from the direct services and resources for the unhoused, since that's the piece that's to be determined through an RFP, and it doesn't affect any of the others. That's my suggestion.
But Steve, there was only, like Sean had mentioned, there was only 2 councilors that supported that move. So, but if you want to make the motion, it may not fly.
I suppose we can look at it. So we're going to pull 10,000. This is real small print up here, by the way. We're going to pull 10,000 from which one, and then do it add it to fair housing. Is that correct? Is that the motion, Corey?
Yes, that sounds a sort of motion-ish.
Yeah, I know. It's
option 2.
Okay.
Decreasing the unhoused to 175,000 and adding 10,000 to the Fair Housing Council. That would be
okay. That's proposal to go ahead. That sound like you want.
I was just going to suggest that we diverted, instead of from the resources for the unhoused, that we divert it from the outreach and shelter. Oh, wait a minute. No, for the, let me see here. From the staff support for homeless families, the Catholic Community Services.
That's our second proposal.
We could say both of those. I mean, we could say from either of those or either of those.
We're gonna have to decide which one.
We probably need to give them better direction than that. And so maybe we can, before we jump into this. So Erin, those are online trainings that they're producing for the Fair Housing Council, right?
Right. They would be trainings specifically that we would choose a time and place and outreach and figure out what the focus is. And then they would likely do them over Zoom online and then record them, and then we could post them.
But we don't have topics for those, right? Like they would give us 4 hours of where we would select the actual material, right?
Well, I would say the material probably all revolves around specifically what are a tenant or landlord's fair housing rights. And so if you're like, oh, let's focus on tenants specifically and do outreach, that might be one training. Landlords specifically might be another. Tenants of a certain area population, maybe we do 2, one in East Springfield, one in Central, so they could be the same trainings, but maybe offered at different times.
Okay, so, but we would have to somehow work out that question, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay, I have Joe first and then Leonard.
Okay, so I'm trying to get clear on what they're asking for. We've already funded them, the same group, and the same group is asking for additional funding to do trainings for what you're calling, Erin, renters that may want trainings, but it seems like that is redundant. If a renter has an issue and wants to have help, would not the CEDA inform them what their rights are and what types of things they need to do, which is the same thing as training, but not necessarily in a group. So it seems as though it's a very expanded program, but it's redundant to what they already offer. Is that right?
I'll let Kelsey.
No, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's not the same organization. It's not, the Springfield Eugene Tenants Association, that $13,000, the Fair Housing Council of Oregon is something different. And so they're reaching a different population. And it's also working on, fair housing rights and people who are, who may be at risk for losing their housing because of discrimination or prejudice or things that might be working against them. So it's an expansion. Both of them are trying to work to keep folks in their homes, which is something that I'm really, I want as much prevention as possible, but it's 2 different organizations doing 2 different things. CEDA is definitely more localized, but the Fair Housing Council of Oregon might be accessible to other folks that wouldn't otherwise. But Erin is an expert, and I'm fighting for my cause.
So as I'm saying, it seems like it's redundant, and it seems like it's not specifically focused on Springfield citizens, period, 100%, and that they can get the same services or assistance through who we're already help funding is through CEDA, correct?
I think the only difference would be how the information is being presented. So CEDA would be a phone number, a hotline number that someone could call and ask about questions they may or may not have or may have. And then the Fair Housing Council is saying, you might not know this, but let me tell you what your rights are. And we're going to put that forward in the training that's online. So it's just, I guess, a little proactive versus reactive maybe. But perhaps, yeah, CEDA, I would have that information on hand if someone were to call.
Leonard, do you want to go with your question? And then...
Sure. Well, the reason that I was proposing possibly taking the $10,000 from Catholic Community Services was that it seemed that it was at least adjacent to staff support for homeless families. It seems like part of their budget would be dedicated toward the transition to housing for these homeless families. Is that a fair assumption, Erin?
I would characterize it's more of the Oasis Day Center staff support. So extending hours at the day center for G Street Oasis families. I think ultimately a goal is hopefully to get someone plugged into housing and provided resources, but the trainings on fair housing rights, I think, is more an education as opposed to helping an individual family.
So my suggestion, Leonard,
I'm done.
Okay. I think maybe we need, with this Fair Housing Council, my instinct would be it sounds like it's more technical training, which is good. But I think my question is it actual training that they can deliver with sort of in that sort of standalone, we've already recorded it, right? Maybe we all work together and we have one set of training about Oregon law that goes across the state, or is it designed to be more Q&A, designed to be more Q&A that's specific? Hey, we're going to like a drop-in center, like we're going to provide you a resource. You're going to get to ask some questions about your specific issue. Do we know that?
I would give it the latter. The impression I got from talking with the outreach coordinator was like, if it's funded, let's talk about what you'd like to see, and we could certainly frame that up. Like, what are you interested in as a city to know more about? And we can certainly figure that out. So they've got certainly the federal fair housing rules that they want to convey, but I think if there wanted to be a Q&A or that kind of piece to it, I got the impression they were very open. There isn't just a playbook that they recite.
My recommendation would be maybe we just get to option 2, and then we send somebody with from council to talk to fair housing and give them just probably a little bit more direction to like marinate it a little bit more. Like, I don't know what the right answer is, and maybe CETA knows, right? But whether or not we want sort of standalone training or Q&A and just let the idea develop a little bit more. I'm not opposed to funding something like 10,000 is not that much in this world. I'm not opposed to funding it, but it doesn't sound like we know what it is. Go ahead, Joe.
And that's my point is it's an outfit that is asking for money. We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know who specifically it's going to serve. And yet that also bothers me when Aaron says, well, hey, just tell us how you want us to spend the money to an organization that's asking for the money. And to me, that is when we have the difference of that 10,000 coming away from even Catholic Community Service, it's got hands-on direct benefit to folks that are unhoused. I don't want to take a dime from anyone that's already doing the hands-on. I'm not saying that the Fair Housing Council would not have a good program, but to me, it is absolutely too ambiguous, and they don't have any hands-on to the people that are in direct need. And if we have services that are already being provided for them at least some level, especially with CETA involved and us funding that, I still need to be convinced that it's worth the money. And even though you say it's a small amount, it's still every dime adds up to $1. So I'm not, and please, Corey, don't take me wrong on this as far as I'm not opposing you. I am really a believer of being fiduciarily responsible, and that's why I am very heartfelt in when it comes to looking at these books and seeing where the money goes. That's all.
Can I just add, I don't want to throw the Fair Housing Council under the bus. They did not request these funds. It's been one of the strategies in the Eugene Springfield Consolidated Plan for many years, and we have not been able to fund them because there hasn't been flexibility. So it was something I brought up as an option for funding during the work session. So I do, like, they're doing good work, and it was me making a phone call to them, be like, oh, council is potentially interested. Can you tell me more? And they're like, you tell me more. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add, they didn't request it. It was a suggestion I had put forward. So
we're talking about somebody that you called and said, hey, I may be able to get you some money. Do you want some?
I wouldn't clarify it like that. I brought it up.
Kind of sounds like that.
I brought it up during the work session with council, and you had expressed interest as a council and asked for more information.
Don't let him give you a bad time.
I love giving her a bad time.
Last meeting of the year, sir.
I'm ready to move on, but I think I'm personally am still supporting just doing exactly what option 2 says, and that's where I'm at.
I believe what I'm hearing is option 2 would be preferred. So I'd make a motion. I hope I'm doing right here. adopt a substantial amendment to the Springfield fiscal year 2020-21 CDBG one-year action plan to allocate CDBG-CB3 funds to respond to the coronavirus. We're talking about option 2, correct?
Does that include the RFP?
Yeah, as stated, I think, Marilee, it's
Okay.
and it's on the document. Yeah.
Okay.
So I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Councillor Pitts.
Aye.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Rodley.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Aye.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0. And we still got like 2 more, Steve, so just keep going right down the list.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive CDBG-CB3 funds.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Neil, could you call the roll, please?
Councillor Pitts.
Aye.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Rodley.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Aye.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes 6-0.
Moving on. Authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign agreements with agencies receiving the awards in order to distribute the funds allocated.
Second.
All right, Neil, could you call the roll on the vote?
Councillor Pitts.
Aye.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Rodley.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Aye.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes 6-0. And it looks like that is all for this item. Thank you very much, Erin. Next item, please.
Thanks.
Next item, item number 2 under business from the city manager, extend development timelines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Resolution number 2, a resolution amending resolution 2020-05 to adopt special regulations to extend development time limits during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mark Rust is here for the staff report.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I am here. And tonight before you is a resolution. We are asking for the council to consider adoption of this resolution to address approving or tolling certain land use approval timelines during the COVID emergency. This resolution would toll those timelines to 30 days beyond when the emergency order is discontinued. So there's a handful of applications we've dealt with over the last year and a half or so that would fall under this. It's really not that widespread, but we feel that it'll provide a flexibility to address a few concerned applications. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Joe?
Just a comment, Mark. I think this is a wonderful thing that the city can do. I think it is the right thing the city can do. And there is no victim here. It is a win-win, flat out. So I appreciate you bringing it forward.
All right, any other questions? Mark, I just had a clarification on the 30 days. There's only a handful of applications that this impacts. Does the 30-day window, does that sort of, if the emergency lapses, is that going to sort of care for those handful of applications? Do you feel comfortable with that timeline?
Yeah, we discussed that timeline internally amongst a number of staff members, and we felt that was the appropriate buffer time. It will give a little bit of notice for when the council decides to end the emergency order to wrap up any loose ends. So yes, we feel that that's adequate.
All right, Joe?
And just a quick one for more clarification. I appreciate your question, Sean. So Mark, in my head, so this doesn't kick in until after the declaration expires, and is that correct?
So the way, and Christina Kraz, the assistant city attorney, may be able to address specifics. I don't know if she's on the call tonight, but so in talking about it, the way I understand it is the time frame from when the emergency order was put into place is basically not counted towards the applicant's timeline during that whole time until 30 days after. So it is retroactive back to when the emergency order was put in place.
So, and you discussed this change with those handful. You're talking handful about? Can you give me an idea, or give us an idea about how many you're talking?
Yeah, I have a list of, it's either 7 or 8 applications.
And have you communicated this with those 7 or 8 folks, and they concur that that would be fine? That works for them as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working with them all separately, and so some of them aren't specifically aware of this potential ordinance. We wanted to make sure it was going to be passed first, but we've been working them throughout to keep these applications alive. This would just create a lot clearer of a path for that to happen.
Okay, so that greatly increases the odds of something getting approved and everything's a green light. Is that correct?
And I'll defer maybe to Christina for a second to make sure my understanding is correct as well.
I was being promoted to panelist for part of what Mark was saying, so it cut out briefly. But I think what you said was that it's retroactive to the beginning of the declaration of state of emergency. And so it basically just pauses the clock there for any application. And then the clock will pick back up again 30 days after the council wraps up its declaration.
But, and Councilor Pishinari, you're right. It will make it easier for those developments to continue to happen if they've run into a snag over the last year and a half and not bind them up.
Okay, that's right. I appreciate that very much. And just keep in mind, we need to be nimble on this because of that mess we've just lived through. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? All right, Steve.
I make a motion that we approve resolution number 2.
All right, Neil, could you call the roll?
Councilor Pitts?
Aye.
Councilor Moe?
Yes.
Councilor Rodley?
Yes.
Councilor Stair?
Aye.
Councilor Woodrow?
Yes.
And Councilor Pishinari?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Next item, any other business from the city manager?
No further business at this time, thank you.
Any business from the city attorney?
No business tonight, thank you.
All right, so for the council, just remember that we'll probably be scheduling a special session in July to come back and talk about a couple of extraneous items. And it sounds like CETA is looking to meet in August. Other than that, enjoy the time away from each other.
We get to go? Are we on vacation after this?
We're gonna miss everybody.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna so miss all of you. Oh, you have no idea.
Fingers maybe live and in person from an undisclosed location in City Hall chambers right after Labor Day. So we're gonna get some more information about that.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a good summer, everybody.
Adjourn it.
We're adjourned.
Okay.